Okay, so this is experiment number 3. We have here types of chemical reactions. Though in your midterms, we also have activity for this, but it was more of practicing how to predict products of chemical reaction and then balancing. Actually, this is almost the same. However, this will be a procedure in the laboratory about the different types of our chemical reactions. So please review. Remember, we have the synthesis or the combination reaction wherein our chemical substances combine to form a new product. So it can be an element and another element combining to form a compound, or we have a compound and another element forming still a new compound. That's the synthesis or combination reaction. And then we have the decomposition reaction, which is the other way around, wherein we have a compound decomposing into its components. Okay? And then we also have single replacement reaction, where you have to follow the activity series of metal before you can predict that the reaction is really possible. So you always have to remember that in single replacement reaction, the replacing element should be more reactive than the original element in the compound. And then we have the double displacement reaction, where we have exchange partners between two compounds. And we also have combustion reaction, where a carbon-containing substance, which is actually the source of fuel, reacts with oxygen. And for complete combustion, it's always carbon dioxide and water, yung mga products nila. And all you need to do is to balance the equation. So in this case, for this experiment, this is actually an actual procedure that is done in the laboratory, representing the different types of chemical reactions. For example, on procedure letter A, you have here the single replacement reaction, wherein you need a piece of zinc metal. So again, you have here a zinc metal, and you have to react it with a copper sulfate solution or copper 2 sulfate solution. This will be done in a plate, or you can have this actually in a test tube. And then after, we will be actually supposedly observing the reaction between the two. That's for the single replacement reaction. And then letter B is for the combination reaction, where we supposedly need a magnesium ribbon, and then we will be lighting the magnesium ribbon in a Bunsen burner in a hot blue flame. So it will be a non-luminous flame. Again, ang gagawin for the magnesium ribbon ay susunugin siya in a hot blue flame of a Bunsen burner. So take note that this one is a combination reaction. And when you say you are igniting the magnesium ribbon, you actually need oxygen here for the reaction. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one naman for the combination reaction is you have there the calcium oxide. A tiny portion of a calcium oxide, and then we will be placing it in a well. When you say well, it's actually a parang plate in, kasi hindi siya kasali dun sa activity natin, no, about the laboratory apparatus. Para siyang plate. Let me draw it. And then, wait lang. Wait my pen. Ayan, para siyang ganito, class. Ayan, just a plate, and then meron siya mga bilog-bilog dyan, mga wells na yan, parang mga maliliit na butas. And dyan mo ilalagay yung chemical substance. And then that is where you observe also the reaction between the chemical substances that we mix. So for this one, you have again the calcium oxide. And then, lalagay mo siya with distilled water in a well plate. And then we have to record the observation after filling it with the distilled water. And then supposedly we have to test the pH pa. But then we cannot do that now if what will be the pH of the resulting substance. Okay, that's number 2 for the combination reaction. And then for the decomposition reaction, you have here, wait lang ha. You have here a crystal copper sulfate pentahydrate to be placed in a test tube. And then what happens next is you have to tilt the test tube and then you have to hit actually the test tube with a hot flame. Again, with a hot flame. This is your substance here, copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate. And then i-hit mo siya in a hot flame using a Bunsen burner. And then afterwards, i-cool. You have to observe what happened to the crystals inside the test tube after heating. And then after heating, mag-a-add ka na naman ng few drops of water to the crystal, and you also have to observe what will happen. That is supposedly the procedure that is to be done inside the laboratory. And then we have, sorry, we have double replacement or double displacement reaction using potassium iodide, and you have to react it with lead to nitrate. And then syempre you have to observe what will happen next after the reaction. And then the second step is, instead of using these two, you will have now the silver nitrate solution to be reacted with sodium chloride. Okay, that's the second step for the double displacement reaction. And then under sa double displacement reaction, we also have the precipitation reaction. That is still under the double replacement reaction. So you still have here the lead nitrate, but instead of the lead, instead of reacting it with potassium iodide, we will be using here aluminum nitrate solution. Okay, so this will be done in a test tube. And then afterwards, we'll be adding 2 ml of potassium iodide, and you have to record your observation. Okay? So yan yung ating experiment for precipitation reaction. You have to read this actually because you have to, as far as I know, you also have to make a schematic diagram of this for you to be familiar of the procedures and how these reactions are done in the laboratory. Another example of a precipitation reaction is through the reaction between copper 2 sulfate and aluminum nitrate also. And this is again done in a test tube, and then adding sodium phosphate after. So you have to record whether a precipitate is formed or not. So if there is a precipitation formed, then positive, there is a chemical reaction. And then we have gas-forming reactions here. This is actually a neutralization reaction, a reaction between an acid and a base. So you have to identify which of the reacting substances is the base and which is the acid. So you have here sodium bicarb reacting with hydrochloric acid. So since this is gas-forming reaction, what we are looking here is the formation of the bubbles when hydrochloric acid and sodium bicarbonate reacts. Okay? Yan yung hinahanap natin for that reaction. But nevertheless, that's a neutralization reaction, and that is still under the, let's go back, double replacement reaction. So just like the precipitation reaction, magkaiba lang sila ng evidence of chemical reaction. The other one is the formation of precipitate. This one naman is the formation of the gas or the bubbles when the substances react. And then we have here combustion reaction. Remember combustion reaction, we have the fuel, and then we have the source of oxygen yielding carbon dioxide and water. So sa combustion reaction, we have here a candle to be placed upright on the center and to be covered with foil covered watch glass. And then we will be igniting the candle. And then after that, we will be observing what happened after lighting the candle. So yan. And then light a spleen, carefully lift one edge of the beaker and insert the lighted end in the beaker next to the candle. And actually mag-o-observe tayo pero hindi natin ma-observe no nowadays kasi we cannot really do it sa lab. And then another procedure for the combustion is through the use of copper 2 carbonate, small one only, and then this is to be placed in a test tube and it will be heat with a hot flame using a Bunsen burner. And then after that, cool yung ating material and you have to write your observation supposedly. But since we cannot do it in the laboratory, this will be your activity now. First, you have to make a schematic diagram of all the procedures above. And then after that, this will be the data table. Instead of writing your observation on the experiment, parang naging activity siya na last time natin activity, yung sa types of reaction pa rin. But this time, from the procedures class, you have to identify the reactants. Again, from the procedure ha, for example, experiment number A, hanapin mo yung experiment A. Siyempre, nandun siya sa taas. Oops. This one, this is the procedure A. Ang gagawin mo is you have to identify the substances na ipapa-react. And dito natin siya isusulat. Wait, what's happening? Okay, if na-identify nyo na yung reactants, then dito natin siya isusulat under sa reactants. And then, since you cannot, hindi natin ma-observe yung reaction, kayo na mismo yung magpe-predict ng product. So just like the activity also, if you have identified the reactants, you predict the products. But do not forget to balance the equation ha. So do not forget if the coefficients are necessary, you also have to write them here, whether on the reactants or in the products. And then afterwards, you write here the type of reaction. So whether that is combination, decomposition, single replacement, double displacement, and combustion reaction. So remember that neutralization and precipitation reactions are still under the double displacement. So susulat natin lahat hanggang sa letter E. So i-check natin, yes, hanggang letter E, itong procedure na ito. So ito yung isusulat din natin dito sa letter E. Hanapin natin yung reactants and then let's place the products here. Let's balance the equation and predict the types of reaction. Now, after that, you have to research for the answers of the questions here under sa guide questions and provide your conclusion on what you have learned while doing this experiment. Questions about this activity? Anything that you would like to clarify? This is handwritten and you have to submit again a file na naka-PDF. Yes, Ryan?
Need pa po ba isulat yung chemical equation, ma'am?
Yeah. Ganito. Diba you have to identify the reactants here. Wait lang. Sulat ko ha. Ganitohin yun na lang para hindi tayo mag-ulit-ulit sulat ng chemical equation. Example lang ito ha kasi I don't know what is the reactant sa letter A. Example, you have here the Na and the Cl. Yan yung na-identify nyo na reactants. Lagyan nyo na lang ng arrow dito somewhere here para diretso na siya chemical equation. So you have to predict the product. Example, the product is NaCl. Now since Cl is, you know that this is a a diatomic molecule. So it's NaCl2. Now, since this one is not a balance equation, idiretso na siya balance class like placing 2 here and placing 2 here. But yung mga reactants nasa reactant na side and yung product or products nasa product din na side. Sa gitna na lang ilagay yung arrow. Para again, diretso na siya na chemical equation. And then ilagay niyo here yung types of reaction. Example for this one is a synthesis reaction. So ganun lang yung pagkasulat niya. Now again, this one will be coming from the procedure ha. So you will be the one to identify the reactants in the procedure. Anything else? No need to copy everything ha. I don't need you to copy this one, the introduction. If you are going to submit na your activity, will be starting here. Okay? Again, you will be starting here with your schematic diagram and then the table and then the answers for the guide questions and lastly the conclusion. But you have the option whether you would like to print the activity and just write the answers. Please do not, ayokong makakita ng typewritten na submission. The answers should be handwritten, but you can print the activity. Okay, pero naka-PDF pa rin ha kasi nasisira class yung inyong submission kapag hindi siya naka-PDF. Tapos, hindi pa talaga siya naka-arrange orderly. Minsan, kapag pictures lang inyong ginasubmit, minsan nauuna yung conclusion. Tapos, hahanapin ko pa saan yung pinaka-nauna. I mean, example, ang una dapat na submission is schematic diagram. Hahanapin ko pa siya sa dami ng pictures na sinubmit nyo. Kaya, nagre-require talaga ako ng naka-PDF. Okay, anything else that you would like to clarify? Wala na ba?